The tariff picture is changing by the day. Tariffs, threats of tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, tariffs removed. Local businesses, depending on imports, are caught in the middle and left with their heads spinning. We'll hear from coffee roasters, tea importers, a leather worker, and a luthier. Plus, we'll get the picture from the farm, where Tennessee's largest crop is in the middle of a tit-for-tat with China. Tariffs in Tennessee after the news. This is Nashville.
Sharing news and stories from the voices of Middle Tennessee. That's This is Nashville. Our show is made possible by Music City Prep Clinic. This is Nashville is in service to you. So if you have an idea for the show or feedback you'd like us to hear, leave us a voice message at 615-751-2500.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. The Senate has now passed the legislation forcing the release of the files on the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The House passed it nearly unanimously yesterday. It now heads to President Trump's desk, and he has said he will sign it, but it's not clear when that will happen. NPR's Sam Greenglass has more on what happens next.
The materials have to be made public within 30 days of Trump signing the bill. Depending on what comes out, that could fuel new conflicts. Trump, for example, has pledged to focus on Democrats whose names might come up. And depending on what the Justice Department redacts, that could spark even more questions.
NPR's Sam Greenglass. A new NPR PBS News Marist poll is out today. It finds that ahead of next year's midterm elections, Democrats have a big advantage. NPR's Domenico Montanaro has more.
The more than 1,400 respondents were asked if the midterm elections took place today, which party's candidate would they vote for in their district. Democrats came out 14 points ahead. That's a whopping lead. The last time it was that wide was 8 years ago during President Trump's first term. In 2018, when Democrats won 40 seats and control of the House, their edge was between 6 and 12 points. The only question is whether this advantage is coming too soon for the party. A year from now, the political landscape could look very different, but right now, Democrats have the upper hand. Domenico Montanaro, NPR News, Washington.
A federal judge in Alexandria, Virginia, is hearing arguments from former FBI head James Comey's lawyers today to have the indictment on charges of lying to Congress and obstruction thrown out, saying it's revenge from President Trump over Comey's criticism of Trump. Meanwhile, Lindsay Halligan, Trump's U.S. attorney who brought the charges against Comey, told the judge today that the full grand jury didn't see the final indictment, that only the foreperson and one other grand juror did. Comey pleaded not guilty to the charges last month. The Polish government says it will force Russia to close its last operating consulate in Poland in response to a railway sabotage incident it blames on Moscow. The Kremlin denies any involvement. NPR's Rob Schmitz reports Russia's left now with only its embassy in Warsaw.
Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski says he's withdrawing consent for the operation of Russia's consulate in the port city of Gdansk. This comes just days after two sections of a rail line connecting Warsaw to Lublin were damaged by what Poland is calling Russian operatives. The line is a strategic link between Poland's capital and Ukraine. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk says two Ukrainian citizens working for Russia are suspected of the act while collaborating with Russian secret services. He said their identities are known but could not be revealed due to ongoing investigations. And he said the pair has already left Poland, crossing the border into Russian ally Belarus. Rob Schmitz, NPR News, Berlin.
You're listening to NPR News. China says it's banning seafood from Japan amid a diplomatic standoff after Japan's Prime Minister Sanaya Takaichi this month said if China could attack Taiwan, it could expect a response from Japan. China's foreign ministry is angry, demanding a retraction that Takaichi says is not coming. China banned Japanese seafood 2 years ago after water from the Fukushima nuclear plant seeped into the Pacific. It's the latest in a series of rising tensions between Asia's two biggest economies. Immigrant physicians make up a quarter of all of the doctors in the United States, but science, health, and immigration policies, such as higher visa fees, are making it harder and less appealing to work here. NPR's Yuki Noguchi has more.
Dr. Michael Liu says recent data show only 1% of physicians in the U.S. have work visas known as H-1B. Those are for highly trained, highly skilled professionals, and those doctors work in some of the toughest communities.
High poverty counties had a 4 times higher prevalence of H-1B physicians. We also saw that same pattern in rural counties or rural communities.
Liu is Canadian and remained in the U.S. after training here and getting married earlier this year. But, he says,
it feels like my contributions, just because I was not born in this country, are less valued.
Yuki Noguchi, NPR News.
Wall Street is trading in mixed territory at this hour. The Dow is down 9 points. The Nasdaq is up 85. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive. Progressive Commercial Auto Insurance protects the vehicles that work to keep small businesses moving forward, including protection while running errands and other tasks. At progressivecommercial.com.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And the Greenhouse in Green Hills, celebrating 30 years in business and working to make the holiday season less stressful by offering catering and venue rental for family and business holiday parties. GreenhouseNash.com.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. For most of us in Tennessee, tariffs are a tad abstract. We know they're having an effect on our wallets, or they will. We're just not always exactly sure how. But our guests this hour have felt the effects quite directly. We'll be talking agriculture later in the hour, as well as leatherwork and high-end guitars. But we'll start with the stuff that gets many of us started each morning: coffee and tea.
As a direct importer, we worked really hard. Joel did for, over a decade to establish relationship where we can import directly from small gardens. So the tea that you get is so fresh. It's from these tiny little unique gardens. Everything is very special and intentional. We've done this for over 10 years now. But come into play this tariff nightmare. I mean, it isn't just that we get the teas, price them as normal, and then a couple months later get this tariff bill of God knows what. This last one was $2,000 because it's whatever random percentage they pulled out of their butt. But we have not been passing it on to the customer because we never knew what the percentage was going to be, the check, and we always just hope for the best.
And that is a hot take from Leah Larabelle of High Garden Tea. Took to Instagram in recent days. High Garden imports teas, supplies restaurants and hotels all over Tennessee and a few other states. She joins us via Zoom with her husband and co-owner Joel. Welcome both of you to This Is Nashville.
Hey, I'm still laughing at that.
Well, we are too. We are too. Well, in the studio here with me is Sean Stewart, a coffee importer with Good Citizen Coffee. So welcome.
Thank you.
And to keep our conversation in line and offer the all-important global perspective, we've got an economist with us for the hour, Eric Bond, a professor with Vanderbilt University who specializes in global trade. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having us.
All right, so also a reminder, we're streaming video at youtube.com/@WPLN. If you're watching, feel free to say hello in the chat. Say hello to our guests or ask a question. We'll see if we can't get to it. Sean, you're right here in front of me, so let's start here. Tariffs on coffee were just lifted this past Friday, I think it was.
Yep.
Which, of course, didn't mean we were going to say, hey, never mind, we don't need you on the show. But does this mean your problems are solved?
No, not quite. Not yet, anyway. So okay. Just a clarification point, Good Citizen Coffee was a roastery I owned in the past. I do work for Bridging Tables, which is an importing company.
Bridging Tables,
out of
thank
Nashville.
you.
But, yes, we've already paid out tariffs, and those are not coming back. So those are still on the balance sheet, things that we have to consider and that are still raising prices, and we won't see the benefit of no tariffs on coffee for quite a while. And beyond that, Brazil still has a 40% tariff on coffee.
Oh, so the Brazil, and was that a tariff that existed before this year?
It was, no, not before this year. And
okay.
It was 50%, and it was reduced to 40%. But
all right.
But it still exists.
And Leah, Joel, the rollback announced Friday also includes tea. Are you all in the clear?
I mean, it's gone back and forth so much. No, and like he was saying, like even with this, sometimes, like I'll also mention herbs and spices, the prices rose almost in preparation for the potential tariffs, the insecurity in the market. It's really interesting how the pricing will jump so much each time I order just because of the inconsistencies. It's been so, no, I think all of us are just kind of waiting, feeling like we're getting whipped around in a whirlwind.
Yeah.
You know?
Also, I'm just going to add, I mean, we're importing from Japan and Taiwan and China and other countries that it's not like this quick process where we have to order large batches well in advance of when we need them. So we're still dealing with the tariffs from this summer.
Wow. We're gonna dig into this during the next 15 minutes or so. Eric, can you kind of put this in perspective that the fact that there are tariffs or threats of tariffs also have an effect on the actual price of goods? Is that unusual?
No, normally tariffs are going to be passed through to consumers or the firms that are selling.
Yeah.
And so it's going to mark up the price of the goods. Some of it may fall on foreign sellers, but most of the evidence is that effect is not all that large. So it's going to be passed through ultimately to consumers and sellers in the U.S.
Well, so Sean, for you all at Bridging Tables, were you passing this along to your, I assume it's roasters who would be your customers?
Yeah, we, as an importer, especially of a commodity or a good that's traded on the market, the price fluctuation, like they mentioned about tea, happens, but our margins are so thin. Typically, most importers are around 10% on coffee anyway. If a 10% tariff gets added on, there's zero chance we can eat that. So it does get passed through to the roaster, and the roaster is also not looking forward to taking a 10% hit, so they're passing it on to the consumer. So that's,
and have you seen that here in Nashville? Like for like, I don't know if there's a customer you could name that's like, yeah, they've added whatever 50 cents to each cup of coffee.
Just about any coffee roaster in Nashville we supply coffee to, and they all across the board have their prices have risen.
I see.
This year.
And you're saying the roasters then supply maybe their own coffee shops, other coffee shops, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then they have to decide whether they're going to charge customers that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Can you kind of quantify, give us an example of an order, a shipment, a something that sort of very starkly puts in perspective these tariffs' impact on your business?
Yeah. Any container volumes run about, 40,000 pounds per container.
You're talking about one of these shipping containers that we would see on a huge vessel.
Mm-hmm.
That's 40,000 pounds
of coffee. Yes.
And you might buy a whole 40,000 pound shipping container?
It makes no sense to move any less than that. So we move in container loads for efficiency and price efficiencies.
Yeah.
And a tariff added to the bill, it's added to the FOB rate, so the commercial invoice from the producer.
FOB?
Free on board rate. So it's the price you pay to an exporter at the origin country. And so the tariff is applied to that bill. So if that bill is $200,000, you got a $20,000 bill waiting for you to clear customs. And it won't clear customs until you pay that.
Wow.
There are ways to defer it, but those are hard and include bonded warehouses.
Oh, defer it as in like you're like, I know I can't get it yet, but I've got to come up with the 20,000. So just give me a minute.
Yes, and it takes a lot of paperwork and a lot of pre-planning, and you have to store in bonded warehouses, and then you pay on release rather than paying up front. But as a small business and a small importer, there was no chance we could do that. So,
are you describing a scenario that has occurred?
Yes.
Okay. Leah, Joel, sound familiar?
Yeah. Oh, quite familiar. We are on a little bit of a smaller scale, I think, but just to give some very clear perspective, I printed out one of our recent UPS invoices from our Japanese tea order from the summer, and it just quite clearly lists all of the teas that we ordered in this batch. And then underneath each one, it shows the value of the tea, and then it says tariff rate 10%, and just literally adds 10% to each item and totals it up at the bottom. And so we owed UPS that, just like an invoice.
Wow.
Yeah, and that money, I think that's just where it gets a little unclear to the public is like we pay that money. That is money we pay, and we give that money to the government. And it's just like, and the interesting thing is, of course, we have to pass that extra. I'm looking at $1,785, this extra 10% on to the public. So now they're paying more money for something, and it's just for this money that I hate to call it a tax. It's not necessarily a tax, but it's not this magic money, because I keep seeing this things of like, we're making trillions and this and that. And it's like, no, we're paying. We, the people, are paying this money. It isn't just coming from these foreign governments or foreign whatever. It's like from your pockets, from our pockets, this money is
no
coming.
one else is paying it. Japan isn't paying this 10%. It's just us.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you're just joining us, we're talking tariff impacts in Tennessee. I'm joined by Leah and Joel Larrabell of High Garden Tea, Sean Stewart of Bridging Tables, and we've got Eric Bond of Vanderbilt, an economist. We're also streaming it at youtube.com/@WPLN. I'm curious, Eric, if pulling back on these coffee and tea tariffs tell us that they worked in the White House's view, or that they didn't have the desired effect.
Well, I mean, it was hard to understand to begin with why the tariffs went on these goods, because, I mean, one of the objectives was bringing back manufacturing to the U.S. Well, these are goods that are not going to be produced in the U.S. We're not going to be producing coffee. We're not going to be producing these teas. And so they're just a tax on consumers. And so I think they've recognized that these didn't make a lot of sense.
And the word tax, Leah sort of stopped herself before calling it a tax, and it does feel like sometimes it sort of shows your partisan leanings, perhaps, if you call these things a tax. But is there any difference between this and a tax?
No, it's a tax on trade. It's a tax on goods brought into the country.
Yeah. Were you surprised to see the U.S. putting tariffs on something that we don't even produce much of in the U.S., like coffee and tea?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's the justifications for these tariffs have been conflicting and confusing. So, I mean, some of the arguments were, well, we're doing this to get better trade deals from other countries. We're doing it to raise revenue. We're doing it to get rid of the trade deficit. But these are conflicting objectives, and so yes. It's hard to understand. And I think the other thing it's clear from this discussion is that the uncertainty created by these changes is causing problems with supply chains, and making it difficult for business to decide on investments. And, particularly for small businesses where credit is going to be more costly, this kind of uncertainty is really, really costly.
Well, let's hop into that. Sean was talking about things kind of getting held maybe at a port. Leah, you talked about, some of the tariff confusion, holding stuff up, even that maybe you all had a shipment that was destroyed, which I do not understand. Can you explain?
Oh, not maybe. Yeah, I guess that's a good term. Maybe. Joel, take the lead on this. Y'all go ahead and pack a lunch.
I'll try to
pack a lunch. Okay, well, we got 5 minutes. Here we go.
Okay, the short version is on our second shipment from Japan this year, we paid for it. We sent the wire transfer, and then it was in customs, and it goes through customs. It usually takes a week or two. I called to check on it because we weren't getting any updates, and the UPS international team said everything was fine. And then about 4 hours later, our tracking updated and just said our entire order was abandoned and destroyed. And we've been trying for the last 2 months to try to get some answers, and UPS is blaming somebody else. Customs is not responding. It's just nothing is happening, and we're out about $10,000. We can't get it back. We've talked to a lawyer. They said you can't do anything.
Is it tariff related? I mean, like, was it being held there because of tariffs?
It's very clear, and this is a big issue which everybody should look into with customs, and UPS is our particular experience, who is supposed to be bringing our package through customs, is that with the new tariffs and the new regulations with tariffs, there's so much confusion that packages aren't getting processed, and communication is just lacking. And they're just deciding to destroy packages and blame it on something like they didn't hear from us regarding some documentation, which we just never were asked for. And
are you
we even called?
Go ahead, Leah. Go ahead, Leah.
Oh, like we even called. Yeah, they're blaming it on like, oh well, we had this document. We've emailed you twice, and we're like, show those emails, and they're like, they must have been destroyed. It's just this bizarre situation, and it's so bizarre. Lawyers even having trouble like getting enough information. But there's been news. I saw a couple news stories of like it just happened. UPS had this huge backlog of packages because of the confusion around it, and then they just started destroying certain packages. Being organic seemed to be a trigger word maybe. But then even beyond that, like now we're having trouble because we even have some of our gardens we've worked with for 10 years not even shipping to the US because of these confusions and having packages destroyed and having things like this. And they're now refusing to even ship to the United States.
Sean, have you all run into having packages that almost vanish? I mean, I guess if you're working with a shipping container, that may be a little different.
Yeah, a little different for us. We are shipping full containers. So we've not had anything lost, but it is definitely held up at port while waiting for customs and payments to go through.
For those payments. Yep. Gather that $20,000.
Right.
We're going to close this segment with this, Sean. Not to put you on the spot, but maybe to put you on the spot. Like, what would you? Obviously, there's been a bit of a rollback. There's still pretty high tariffs on Brazil for coffee. But what would you say to the president if you were invited to the Oval Office to give some advice?
That is quite a question.
Leah's already spoken.
There's a lot of things that I would want. A lot of things I would want to say that I wouldn't say. But I think the question would be why? What purpose was there in putting tariffs on goods that can't be produced in the U.S.? Like, it doesn't make any sense, and there's not fiscal reason for it. There's not economical reason for it. So what's the justification, as Eric pointed out, of putting tariffs on products that we just can't make here?
And Leah, Joel, has this influenced your politics in any way, or gotten you to get involved in a way you didn't expect?
I wouldn't say it influenced. It just maybe reiterated some thoughts we had.
Yeah.
That's me speaking. But what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to keep this professional and say it's absolutely insane what's happening. And just, I mean, it's so ridiculous. And we're just having to tread water and try to survive despite this ridiculous situation.
I think it's really hard to read when it's like we're making trillions and bragging about all this money that the tariffs are making, when we, the people actually on the ground, the people actually paying the prices,
we are losing trillions.
We're losing money. This really hurts to see those words. Not surprising words, but it's just very frustrating.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience. We do need to take our first break, and we're going to say goodbye to Leah and Joel of High Garden Tea, and Sean with Bridging Tables, also going to run from here. In their place, though, we're going to welcome in a luthier and a leather worker here in Nashville, also dealing with the tariffs. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, working to help donors make more possible through the power of community giving. More at cfmt.org. And the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Vanderbilt University, offering intellectual courses for adults over 50. Learn more about the wide-ranging topics and full curriculum at vanderbilt.edu/OLLI. And David Lusk Gallery, presenting Red Grooms, Tennessee Foxtrot Carousel, original drawings, carvings, and new wall paintings, celebrating the carousel, October 30th through December 20th. More at davidluskgallery.com.
I'm Jane Clayson. Hester Kaplan felt as though she never knew her father, the acclaimed biographer Justin Kaplan. In trying to discover and understand him, she turned to her father's Pulitzer Prize-winning book on Mark Twain.
He was a very private and hidden man, but he was enormously empathetic and deeply psychological when it came to talking about Twain.
That's next time on Here and Now.
This afternoon at 1 on 90.3 WPLN News.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. We started the hour with small businesses that import coffee and tea. Nashville artisans are also being hit by tariffs, which is why we invited luthier Manuel Delgado, owner of Delgado Guitars, and leatherworker Michael Strickland, who owns Loyal Strickland in Nashville. Thank you to the both of you for joining. And Vanderbilt economist Eric Bond is with us the whole hour to help bring some global context to the local impact of tariffs. All right, Delgado Guitars, for those unfamiliar, sound a little like this. And that's just one of the many friends of Manuel Delgado playing on one of his, would you call it a classical guitar? Is that the?
That's actually a requinto romántico.
Well, that's a much more interesting
right?
name. How would you describe that kind of guitar to a layman?
So it's if you are a classical guitar player and you were to put a capotrasto, or here they say capo, on the 5th fret, that's the tuning for the requinto. So
really?
it's tuned at a higher pitch, but you would play it just as you could play a guitar, but it just has a higher tuning, and you don't lose any of the scale length by putting the capo on it. You still have a full scale length.
I see.
Yeah.
So are these all made in Nashville?
Yes. So Delgado instruments are all handmade. I'm what's called an old world luthier, and we're still making all of those by hand here in Nashville.
And where do your materials come from primarily?
Materials come from different parts of the world, but we're not sourcing large, like pallet size, products or anything like that. But where the tariffs come into play with us is I have another brand called La Tradición, which means the tradition. And we work with school programs around the United States. So in order to offer an affordable, culturally correct instrument, those instruments are being made in countries like Mexico, China, and then we have accessories that come from China and Canada as well.
I see. And so those guitars that are being made in Mexico and China, to get them here, you got to pay the tariff.
Yeah, or not pay the tariff, which happened, so a lot of what's happening with a lot of small businesses is we're a full quarter behind on product because we had to freeze our order that we had put back in, I think it was May. And when Trump raised the tariff to 140%, it was cheaper for me to lose an $8,000 deposit than to go through with the order and pay that 140%. And when you're trying to be competitive in a market and offer like a good quality entry-level classical guitar, now that you price yourself out by adding all of those tariffs. So it's a false narrative when people think that those expenses are not passed on to the consumer, because if I have to pay it, I can't absorb all of that cost.
So this is a real example that you had an order of guitars that you had made in Mexico. Or
in China.
In China.
This particular order, yes.
And you had an $8,000 deposit for the order, and you said it's not worth it, and you abandoned the order.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, Eric, I wonder if you could talk about if these tariffs are designed with companies like this in mind. It's like it's an American company, but having something produced in another country that you couldn't produce at that price here and shipped over here.
Right. So, how the tariffs affect you are going to depend on your business. So, to the extent that you're importing things from foreign countries, from China, wherever, these tariffs are going to hurt you. Now, there are going to be beneficiaries, though. If I'm, say, producing furniture and I'm competing with furniture from China, they're going to pay a tax, which is going to make my goods more attractive. So, it depends on your business, the extent to which you're affected by this.
I see. Well, so Manuel, how much could you build that same guitar for if you decided, all right, we're going to try to make these same guitars in America, these sort of lower-end classical guitars for students?
Yeah, it's impossible. If you're trying to pay a fair wage to the folks who you have working with you, which we do, we want to make sure that they have what's a living wage in Nashville, Davidson County. You can't compete. So you're to use that example, like if you're not to throw shade on IKEA, but if you're an IKEA and you're offering like a low price product, and you're a company here that's trying to compete with them, then maybe those tariffs might affect them in some way where you now have an advantage. But we're competing against companies that are doing the same thing, Yamaha, where they're bringing their instruments in from China as well, and we're trying to compete with that brand. So it becomes impossible. You're paying, without knowing the exact numbers, probably 6 to 7 times what it would cost to have that instrument made here.
Wow. Well, I could see that why that would not be an option. Michael Strickland, let's bring you in here. The tagline for Loyal Strickland, your company, is "Made to Endure." In fact, is that on your hat? Yes, it is. Oh,
yeah.
Built to Endure.
Yeah,
built to endure. Let's check that one too. Built to Endure. Can your bags, your belts, your denim jackets are beautiful. Can you endure these tariffs?
Yeah. So luckily, the countries that I source my materials from that aren't in the U.S., we've always been a made in USA company as far as the labor goes, and for as much as we can, the materials. But some things just aren't made here that are like to the quality that we need. We specialize in sourcing from regions that this is all they do. So leather from Italy, in Tuscany, there's a town, I've been to it. There's 200 tanneries there. You can look from the hillside down at this town, and every single building is a tannery.
Wow.
Same thing in Japan. For our denim, the best denim in the world it's just made in Japan, and that's where it is. And luckily, these countries, the tariffs that have been placed on top of what they already were only about 15 or 20%. But then that equals, you're paying that on top of the tariff that was already there. So we had an 8% tariff before. That's fine. We knew about it. We pay it. But with the changes, it's now another 15% for a total of 25% of the cost of the material to then that we then have to pay. And so we have to, at a certain point, start raising prices. And we do already have a premium product because our labor is all here. We're dedicated to that. But there's just no way around it. After a certain point, you have to raise your price.
Well, it's very high-end products. I mean, you're talking about like a $1,200 backpack. Beautiful backpack, and which I imagine gets some people looking and thinking, well, I mean, this is just a luxury item. But, I was thinking about for your business, what does an additional $2,000 tariff bill each month change how you operate your business?
It takes away, that could be money I could either, pay myself. I could hire another part-time employee for that amount. That could be, part of a paycheck for an employee I already have. So then it just makes things tighter. It makes it to where I have to be a lot more mindful about what materials I have and how much I'm going to order. I have to then go and order less sometimes, which increases my cost because maybe I can't get a price break that I might otherwise get. Or an example that I see that I have a lot is that I buy a lot of my leather from a distributor that's here in the U.S. And I buy from them because they take on that cost to, import it. And the price was fine for me to just order every time I needed, a couple hides of leather. But now it's gotten to the point that they've raised their prices to where, all right, I need to then stop spending money with a U.S. company and then go directly to the tannery to get it cheaper.
Like you might start getting it straight from Tuscany.
Right, which I've done before, but they have minimums. And so then I'm spending thousands more. And so it's like, what do you choose?
Yep.
And at the end of the day, you need to choose what's best for, the bottom line for us.
Well, Eric, are tariffs meant to get Michael to source his leather and denim from the U.S. instead?
Well, not clear. As I said before, it's difficult to tell. But I mean, one of the objectives that has been stated is to try and get more manufacturing in the U.S. The difficulty is, you're going to get less of something else because we can't get more of everything, and so if you're trying to bring back manufacturing, you're gonna harm other businesses in the economy because they compete for resources.
Obviously this is like made in the USA products. I mean, you would consider it made in the USA, right, Michael?
Yeah, we take the raw material. That's the only thing that comes from outside the U.S. and not all of it. 50%, maybe a little more, is from American companies. We still use American materials, but those hides for the leather come from Europe, and they come from other countries because maybe just the right supply or the right quality isn't available here. So the cost is going to go up regardless.
So Eric, like this day and age in global trade, I assume this would be pretty normal that, even any kind of manufacturer, maker in the U.S. would be getting products from overseas potentially.
No, that's right. I mean, global supply chains are critical. And I mean, the whole idea of international trade is to get things produced in the most efficient locations. And so that sort of makes the economic pie biggest, as it were. And I mean, what has made trade unpopular in some quarters is that not everybody has benefited from that. Okay, and so being, both parties were critical of free trade and were more pro-tariff. I think the reason is that we didn't do politically a particularly good job of compensating the people who are losing from trade. And so we didn't recognize the relocations that have to take place when you have declining manufacturing in certain areas. And so that has made trade unpopular, and I think has sparked this round of tariffs, which I think is not the right response, but that's where we are.
But thanks for the reminder there that global trade has been, especially let's say for the old sort of manufacturing that was going on in Tennessee it was very bad for manufacturing here. Can
I
please,
to draw
Manuel?
an analogy, like when you're talking about artists specifically? So to draw an analogy, like it'd be like saying, like, well, and Delgado guitars are made in the USA. The La Tradición line is what supports my luthier habit, is how I like to put it. And it also is what allows me to have a brick and mortar, pay more taxes, hire different employees. So it would be like saying, well, I want that singer-songwriter to just be producing and writing songs here in the United States. But that singer-songwriter doesn't make a living just doing that. They're working at a coffee shop. They're working here. They're working wherever they are to be able to afford to do their art. And when people like what we're doing, when we're being creative, we have to source materials from other areas so that we can afford to do the art that is the core of who we are. So you need these imports to be competitive. We just are unable to be competitive here in the United States. And we've tried. I've tried to local companies where we have straps to try to see if they'll do what we want to do. And it's twice as much as what we're paying. And then you still need to be able to mark it up. And it's really hard to be competitive in that market.
So can I follow up on that? Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a good example of sort of trade allowing you to specialize in what you're good at.
Yeah.
And then import the things that can be produced more efficiently elsewhere.
If you're just joining us, we're talking tariff impacts in Middle Tennessee. Manuel Delgado makes guitars. Michael Strickland makes leather goods and denim apparel. Vanderbilt economist Eric Bond is also here to help us understand global trade. So, Manuel, has this period made you consider any fundamental changes to your business?
Well, our overhead doesn't go down unless you start laying off people or anything like that. And you hear stories of people who are having to shut down sections of their business or lay people off because of how it has affected. So with us, what we had to do is we have to shift and try to figure out more ways to be creative. But I'll tell you, the thing with artists is I remember during the pandemic when people would say, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm an artist. I'm always in a pandemic. We're always trying to find ways to stay significant. When property taxes are going up around you, when rent is going up, when all of these challenges are being thrown at you as a small business owner, and then add on top of that an artisan or an artist small business owner, you're always having to find ways to be creative. It's just who we are. It's in our DNA. It's like we thrive to be in that space where it's just not an easy thing to get up every day. So. The short or the long answer, I guess, is yes, you shift, but it's something that is not today. It's tariffs. In 2000, it was COVID. In 2026, we'll see.
Michael, have you altered plans because of tariffs?
Yeah, absolutely. I have stopped making as many leather goods because it's a little easier to get clothing made here. There's not a ton of factories, but they're all concentrated in Los Angeles and maybe a few other places around the country. But because it's so hard to find a leather factory here that can help us grow, right now I make that $1,200 bag myself, and it takes me a day.
I should have
or
mentioned
day
that
and a
it's
half.
made by hand.
Yeah, it's made by me specifically. And so, I'm having to stop putting so much money and time into leather goods so that I can then go get more production made of clothing. But then because of that, I have to then go spend a lot more money on ads, and which does help us grow, but that's the only way that we're going to be able to grow at this point. And so one of the things, though, is like one of our main materials is selvage denim, which is a more premium denim, but
What word are you saying? Selvage?
Selvage denim.
Okay,
They're made
I'm
on
unfamiliar.
antique looms. It's like it's how denim used to be made before things were a little more mass produced. And so it's like a slower, more expensive way of making denim. But it's essentially it costs twice as much, and the rolls are about half as wide. So you have to buy a lot more. And that means it's more expensive to ship too, though. And then you have the tariff on top of it that I've had to start using. It's still quality denim, but it's not what I would like to be using. And because I have to then order so much to make a production run worth it, I then have to spend more money. And so it's made my costs go up. I planned to sort of tackle the tariff situation and just like the uncertain economics of things this year by just putting everything I could into marketing, because what we were doing before wouldn't have sustained us this year. Like we would have definitely struggled hard if I didn't have the foresight to then be like, we need to put way more into the visibility of our company.
Meaning that you needed to move more product, so you invested in marketing instead.
But it required me to take loans maybe I didn't want to, or put money on the credit card I didn't want to, until my production and my sales reached what I needed to sustain it. There was a big gap there that was sort of forced to grow in a way that I wasn't planning to.
Yeah.
So I mean it's paying off, but it has been a lot more effort than it was in previous years.
Yeah. I think people have varying degrees of sympathy for small business owners, and maybe they just assume the finances are amazing, or who knows what. They've heard of Delgado guitars, and they've seen how beautiful they are. But Manuel, I wonder if you were talking to policymakers or even the president, like what story you would share to help them understand like the practical impacts of a trade war.
Well, the ripple effects that happen is, so we have a music venue that is our showroom by day, music venue by night. It was something that we started to be basically offer something for our community. And during COVID, we would host free live stream events where you could have a virtual tip jar to help the artists continue to earn money. And we found sponsors like UPS, Visa that came in, and with that money, we were able to help as well to run the event. But my point being is, all of this comes from our family has always been very community-minded. So when you now have a business that's risking having to either layoffs or potentially we're going to lose a whole quarter of revenue this year because we're behind on our order, because by the time we were finally able to bring that production back that we were waiting on from China, we're a whole quarter behind already. So everything trickles down. So it's not just I'm all about like wanting to have everything made here in the United States if it was possible, but it's just not possible. The systems have been set up to where it's just not possible. And people don't understand, you talk about policymakers, people don't realize the importance of like how Congress plays a role in this. And I know we're waiting on a Supreme Court decision to come in. All of these things play a part. And I think sometimes people are looking at the popularity of the candidate, if you will, or the party that they're associated with, but they're not looking at the policies that they're invested in. And that's where my frustration is with politics. I feel like it's almost like high school popularity, where they're not taking the time to find the true depth of what that woman or man stands for, what they're running for. And I think that's where I would like to see more from the American people, looking at those types of things rather than just blue and red.
Well, Manuel Delgado, owner of Delgado Guitars, Michael Strickland, owner of Loyal Strickland. Thank you both for joining us, giving us a pretty up-close look at the impact of tariffs in Middle Tennessee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take one last break. When we come back, MTSU agribusiness professor Chaney Mosley will join us to talk about Tennessee's biggest cash crop and the tariff impact on soybeans. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And Amazon, proud sponsor of WPLN's Daily Show, This Is Nashville. Engaging our differences so we can discover our unity. More on Amazon's community work at aboutamazon.com. And Alliance Bernstein. Since 2019, employees have impacted our community by giving more than 5,000 hours of volunteerism in Middle Tennessee. AllianceBernstein.com. Alliance Bernstein is not affiliated with National Public Radio. And Renewal House, providing care, connection, and recovery programs for women and their children. Learn more at renewalhouse.org.
I'm a recent transplant to Nashville, and it's been really helpful to discover the city. Like, I love the things around Nashville politics and the mayor's office, and I love the climate reports, and I love the education reports. So I appreciate that, because it's been difficult to try and figure out kind of what to do and where to go and what are the great things about this city. I'm Mary Kay, and I'm a member of 90.3 WPLN News.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. If you're looking at a big field in Tennessee, middle and west Tennessee anyway, and you don't know what it is, chances are it's soybeans. They are our biggest crop by acreage and value. It's also our biggest export crop. And then our buyer, China, decided to shop elsewhere. We're talking Tennessee agriculture and tariffs with Associate Professor Chaney Mosley, who teaches agriculture education at MTSU. We still have economist Rick Bond of Vanderbilt sticking with us to the bitter end. Welcome, Chaney. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, why are we exporting so much soy?
Well, soy is, I think a lot of folks hear soy, they hear soybeans, and they may think immediately of edamame, especially if we're thinking about an Asian country. But actually, the majority of our soy is exported to China for livestock feed.
Really?
Yep.
And we use soy for livestock here?
We do. Yeah. A lot of the soy produced here in Tennessee and across the country is also used for livestock feed. It's very high in protein. It has, all the nutrients that are really needed by cattle, and so it's a great crop to produce.
Well, why does China need to buy soybeans rather than grow them themselves?
Yeah, a lot of soybean production relates to climate, also access to farmland. So there could be many reasons that they're trying, that they need to purchase so much from the United States or, currently Brazil.
Right. Well, so Rick, is China's move in retaliation? Effectively, they stopped buying our soybeans. It wasn't directly because of a tariff, but was it specific to some kind of tariff that they were retaliating against, or just kind of a general, all these tariffs, we're going to take our soybean money and go to another country?
So this is similar to what happened in the first Trump administration when tariffs were put on China. China has two big levers against the U.S., okay? One of them is soybeans, because we sell a tremendous amount to them. The other one is rare earth minerals, which are essential for a lot of high-tech and defense-related industries. And they have, the vast majority of the world's supply of these. And so they cut that off, and that sort of brought the Trump administration to negotiating, reducing some of those tariffs.
Yeah. Well, so you're saying it's amazing how short memories can be. That soybeans have basically been in the crosshairs before.
Yes. So as in the first Trump administration, tariffs, they put a tariff on soybeans, and the price farmers getting dropped by exactly the amount of that tariff.
You're saying China put a tariff on soybeans.
It's retaliation to what we were doing.
I see.
Right? So
I see. Well, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're wrapping up our hour on tariff impacts in Middle Tennessee by looking at farming exports. Rick Bond here with us, economist from Vanderbilt, and Chaney Mosley, who teaches at MTSU. So, Chaney, does this mean if China's not buying all these soybeans, are there just soybeans sitting around in store bins this fall?
Not yet. So the soybean farmers here in Tennessee are actually still harvesting their soybeans, and soybeans can be kept in storage for up to a year, even more. And so, but I think many of our farmers are more concerned about the future, right? So if we don't move the soybeans that have been harvested, that are sitting at those grain elevators, and now if we don't move that, then in future years when we have, soybean, the crop is there, where does it go? And I think that's part of the concern, but that would lead to an abundance of soybeans that exist here in the United States. And I'll yield to our economic expert over here to maybe mention the impact of increased supply on demand and how that impacts the cost that the farmer could receive for the soybeans.
Oh, the domestic price would drop if we had a huge supply.
No, that's what I said. That's what happened last time, right? The tariff was borne by the soybean producers in the U.S.
Well, there was I saw 60 Minutes, I guess it was last week, that included several farmers in West Tennessee who were talking about having prices that were like the same prices they'd been paid for soybeans like in the 70s, which seemed hard to believe. But Chaney, are farmers really dealing with prices that have not kept up with inflation at all?
I think that, if we're talking about soybeans or just crops
Soybeans,
and livestock in general, I wouldn't say that they've not kept up, but the market is volatile, right? So the amount per bushel that a farmer can get on any crop that is produced, it fluctuates. So it goes up, it goes down. But if they're talking about the current price that maybe they're able to get for the soybeans compared to the 70s, that might be a realistic lived experience.
I see. Well, they're also getting hit by tariffs because a lot of their equipment comes from China. Like, how's that playing out?
Yeah, so I spoke with a farmer yesterday in neighboring Rutherford County, and he said that it's not just the soybeans, the cost that they can get per bushel. It's also the increased cost of production, and that's because of the inputs, right? It's the seeds, but it's also the equipment that's required to harvest. And he discussed recently purchasing a blade needed to cut the stalk during harvest. And when it came in, it cost more, and he flipped it over and looked, and it said made in China. And he shared that the cost of that tariff was delivered to the farmer. So he had to pay more for that piece of equipment that is essential in order to harvest his crop. I think he was going to join us today, but he was still harvesting yesterday, so he couldn't. And he may be out in the fields today.
That's why
so
he couldn't join us, because he's actually harvesting soybeans.
Yes, still.
Well, that's 100% understandable. So, how aware are soybean farmers of this? Being sort of caught up in this trade war.
Oh, they're very aware.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a trade war that impacts agriculture, it also threatens the livelihood of not only the Tennessee, but also the American farmer. Their livelihood, it hinges on the ability to produce and sell their commodity, be it a meat-based product or a crop that's used for either livestock feed or human food consumption. Yeah. So they're very aware.
Yeah. Eric, the White House says a trade deal with China is in the works. I'm not sure if we know any details about what it would be, but is there reason to think that soybean purchasing would just suddenly resume if something was worked out?
Well, I would hope so. Yes. I mean, once the previous round of tariffs were reduced, the Chinese tariffs on soybeans were reduced. So I would expect that to be the case.
Well, the White House also talked about some sort of bailout for farmers who are going through so much right now. So, Chaney, if you're taking tariff proceeds and kind of using those to give them to farmers who are hurt by tariffs as well, I wonder what the point was.
Well, here's what I will tell you about farmers. They are the hardest working people that we have here in the United States of America, and they are the backbone of our economy, especially in Tennessee when we think about how agriculture contributes to state revenue. When you talk about bailouts, farmers don't want that. Farmers are very prideful folks. They are some of the strongest people that we have who I think exude American values. And the last thing that they want is a bailout. They want to be rewarded for their hard work and their effort. And so a bailout is not what farmers are looking for here. They want access to global markets. They're not impacted by decisions made by legislators.
Yeah.
So, and I liked your point that what was the point of this? We saw this last time. Again, there was a bailout of soybean farmers in the first Trump administration. We're hearing discussion now of tariff rebates to households. And again, what was the point? If you're going to put on the tariffs and then rebate them, all you've done is sort of mess up the global supply chains and create chaos.
Are farmers generally supportive, though, of some sort of activity, some sort of action in trade to help them sell soybeans?
I think farmers would be supportive of any activity that would help them sell whatever commodity they're producing. But when that activity has an immediate negative economic impact on them, that causes great concern. And this is why we hear about it in the news so much, because the cost of this has the potential to go beyond financial aspects. There's also a human cost associated with this. And you mentioned farmers in West Tennessee, and there are a lot of stories about this, but many of these farmers are in multi-generational farms, and whether they're the second, third, fourth, or fifth generation, they're looking at the potential loss of income and wondering, how do I keep my farm alive? Am I going to be the generation that stops the farm operation? Am I going to be responsible for selling that farm? And when we lose farmland, we lose our ability to produce food and feed for our livestock, but food for human. And so when I talk about the potential cost, the human cost, it threatens the dignity of the American farmer. And many folks may not know, but farmers die by suicide at a rate that is 3 times higher than the general population. Most farmers and farm workers are men. Men die by suicide at a rate that is 3 times higher than women. And so the stress that circumstances such as this puts on farmers, it increases the likelihood of them feeling their sense of belonging is threatened, their dignity, just their entire livelihood. So I think that is also a part of the conversation that may not be getting as much attention.
Yeah. Well, it was part of that 60 Minutes piece, and it was eye-opening to me. Eric, can you wrap us up here with any hope, any good news, any light on the horizon?
Hard to say. I guess I would wrap it up by saying that we had a trading system which had some flaws, but we had also a mechanism for dealing with trade disputes and so on. And right now we're ripping that up. And I don't think it was fully appreciated, the kind of cost that has imposed on small businesses in particular.
Well, economist Eric Bond of Vanderbilt, working overtime this hour. Thank you for joining us. And Chaney Mosley of MTSU, thank you for helping us understand the impact of tariffs in Tennessee on farmers.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Tomorrow is our weekly Roundabout, where we talk about the big stories in Middle Tennessee with our panel representing views across the political spectrum. We'll talk guard deployments, political pardons, and school vouchers, and take your calls. Be sure to join us. We'll also be streaming video again on the WPLN YouTube page. Today's episode was produced by Josh Deepan. Board operator and also directing is Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. The conversation doesn't have to end. You can comment, tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message at 615-751-2500. You can also find us on the socials at This Is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.
The Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Vanderbilt University, where adults over 50 come together to learn, connect, and explore. With non-credit courses, cultural programs, local explorations, and trips, OLLI covers a wide range of subjects from history, science, politics, religion, the arts, and more. Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, a community of lifelong learning